a sort of last-minute rule about the skins anyway. It was only raised by one of the players sort of the day before, so I don't think there was an official penalty in place, and that ended up costing them a point as well in that group stage. So,
how much is that? That's 17! The double 5 drop, and that is Dog biting the dust as the Malygos. He goes full stank face in response to that. He is going to bite the dust in 4th place, but Zyrella and Slisser survive.
Something we've talked about a lot. Let's just go into this. And let's have a look what they've got. There is a Deryl in there and a farm available for Dog. That's an interesting choice because you get a bonus point for winning the lobby, and Deryl doesn't win lobbies. It comes second all the time.
Oh, Deryl. I thought you said, yep, so Adele is in there. I thought, what, really? Is she? I mean,
wow. Start to the cast.
Yeah.
Dog does take it. And I did do some calculations, of course that's what I do, based on top-level MMR players' stats. And in this format, because of that bonus point at the top, it does sink significantly down what you would think it is as a normal hero.
Yeah, because Deryl is a very common 2nd to 3rd place hero, as you say, but a little bit rarer to pick up those wins. I think that is overstated a little bit. I'm not going to argue with it too much because it is certainly what the stats bear out. But I do think the very best players do have that ability to convert 2nds and 3rds to 1st with Deryl, because I do think a lot of that, with a few exceptions of heroes, is very generic, right? It's just, there's a lot of player skill when it comes down to those final fights where better players can convert in positions by coming up with creative solutions, and it's a little less down to what your hero is and more so just whether you can outthink your opponent in those spots. But I do certainly agree with the philosophy that I think Deryl is a little bit devalued once you get into a tournament format that rewards coming first.
Yeah, particularly when it's up against the farm as a choice, which is a lot more volatile, but Dog making the call. And also, from the Americas' point of view, if Dog just comes second, let's say that's the sort of default answer with Deryl, that's fine, right? The team around him will just rack up an average number of points at least. He should be fine with that good start. All right, Simi, we're listing her as Lofi because that is what she requested, but she wants to be talked about as Simi. Already on an early hook toss decision on how to proceed, how long to stay on tier 1 with this board.
Yeah, looking to roll down for some real economy there. Doesn't necessarily find it. Does pick up a Elemental now. There was that Acolyte pair that she could have just picked up. It does feel a little bit strange when you're playing Hook Toss to be going with that kind of start because you're not really using your hero power. You just buy Acolytes because they're the best 1-drop and you have Acolytes on your board and you just say that you're going to be happy with that. Simi instead chose to go rolling for some actual money printing units. Murloc's out, as you can see up on the bands at the top, but Beast still in. Pirate's still in as well, Swabby being a decent hero power target to pick up on Tavern 1 as well.
Sun with the double Weaver start, and if the last few days are anything to go by, she won't see a demon in the next 12 shots.
She, so I was looking at her Twitter a little bit. We didn't actually see that much of her play. We saw that one lobby where we did follow her quite extensively, and she did low roll in that lobby that we watched. Like, I can say that with significant confidence. But in some of the other lobbies that we didn't watch, she confessed herself on Twitter that she felt like she was making mistakes in some certain positions. So, I do think it has probably been a mixture of both from Sun that's led to the slightly underwhelming performance from her. But, as I mentioned, she is a very, very high-ranked player, very much, on a par with RDU in terms of where their ranks sit on most occasions throughout the last couple of months or so. Slisser here, though, picking up a beautiful Cathy here as we go into the new Mal'Ganis, the immune demon that you can use to really scale those Jessies up as hard as possible. That is the dream triple to find there.
Yeah, it's just going to be infinite tempo. What have we not got in? We haven't talked about that. No mechs is the important part, but there are elementals. That's the two things that actually matter at the moment in terms of looking at the early game, in the very at least. No Quillballs makes things a bit interesting later as well.
Yeah, and it's RDU on the George here as well, I believe. Yes, confirmed over on the left-hand side, which to me, this is not the kind of George lobby that I particularly favor. Didn't get to see what his picks were overall, but we've talked about it a lot, right? The ability to actually find stat scalers off your Divine Shields that give you that ghoul protection. That's Quillballs and that's Mechs, and both of those tribes are out of this lobby at the moment, which I think weakens George significantly. And even if you want to go back to it, like the old school strat of stay on 4 buy Toxfins and just be poison Murlocs that can now be converted a little bit into SI7 strats again. With George, the Murlocs are the third tribe out of this one as well. So RDU is going to have to do something just that little bit more creative to get those Divine Shields to do some work in this one.
Collins on the Diablo, turn 4, has the interesting choice here, just going for maximum tempo, or whether he wants to actually take some money and think his 5/5 could do the work in enough of these battles to pick up a lot of prizes. Yeah, he's just going to lobby. He's going to just tavern up and let this do the work. And Collins, the most aggressive leveler we have seen, I think, so far in this tournament.
Yeah, very aggressive leveler overall. Very interesting to see it being done on Diablo, though. It does mean that most of the high tempo starts here will probably, if not pick up a win, at least steal the treasure, right? Because remember, it is kind of either or in this situation. You don't necessarily have to win the fight. You just need to get enough attacks into that 5/5 to be able to take it down. So you see on the left, for example, Collins wins that fight, but he wins it without the 5/5 on the board.
Yeah, and we did see, I think it was Simi yesterday on Diablo, have a bad start, but because presumably something similar to this just built right up as the lobby went on with no hero power. Who needs a hero power anyway?
True. Collins does get the reward, though, from going to the early Tavern 3. Does pick up a Tarot Gosa, picks up a Spawn alongside it, which is a little bit of auto-scaling that he can use here. That is +1/+1 permanently each turn to the Tarot Gosa. It's nowhere near the power of that Promo Drake scaling that he might be looking for later, but it's still pretty good. Meanwhile, on the right-hand side, Bill has some very difficult decisions to be making here, because the 4-drop triples can be coming very, very quickly here. I would imagine that the Dormants are still 1 or 2 turns away from coming out with the triples. But having put the second Red Whelp on the board now, if that's the card that's coming into hand next turn, he will have maximum option as to whether to triple into a 4 or triple into a 5 at this position. And I think that his play right there of just playing that Swabby at the last moment was the most difficult overall decision he had to make that turn, because obviously playing the Swabby makes him slightly stronger for a turn or two of just having an extra 2/2 in play. But if it doesn't affect the intervals of when he's going to press the level button in a meaningful fashion, you kind of end up wasting that gold if you don't really benefit from that discount at the right time. So working out when to play a Swabby, especially when you have the knowledge that you're going to be hitting a Swabby triple, I think is a very difficult thing to do.
I'm watching the Radu versus Dog fight, and Dog has $1 million money on the board going as Deryl going into turn, whatever this is, number 5, number 6, I think in gold and turns interchangeably sometimes. We're going to have a look at that Bill decision right now. Okay. He's going to just take the 5 and go for it. We saw
mediocre
work. He's got to weigh up how the Lightfang might just get enough tempo. If he's going to be taverning up quite aggressively, that might buy him enough tempo to get to the real good cards. But it's not a long-term choice.
Yeah, I do think the Pale Scale is slightly more long-term in terms of how long it can actually maintain a strong board for you. I did talk down the Lightfang pick yesterday when Simi went for it. She ended up hitting the Golden extremely quickly on the Lightfang, and then also recognized the position of when to transition out of the Lightfang to take down a very well-played lobby from her part in the end, I think. But in the end, Bill goes for option number 3, which I'm not massively surprised by. I was just about to lead around to it as an option. I think Pale Scale was probably the highest tempo option overall. Lightfang kind of had a bit of optimism and a bit of tempo, and then Tavern Tempest was the outright greediest choice if you wanted to go down that line of just going straight up for economy, and that is what Bill ends up doing in this spot.
And he was rewarded with that Elemental, so he got an extra money on top of his extra money. Yeah, and that's going to enable him to do what he wanted to do with great ease. And look how he's destroying the Tusk here in this fight anyway, although there is a Bran on that board, so that's not representative of how things are going to continue, most likely.
Yep, no, Bran can be used pretty effectively by Hook Tusk because, of course, if you manage your breakpoints very nicely, you can, pick up one battle cry, hero power it into another, for example, like pick up a jug, hero power it into a smogger, for example, is a very powerful interaction that can go down in a couple of spots if you have that Bran as Hook Tusk. But Bran, not quite the overwhelming I win condition that it used to be way back in the day, but we did see again from that game yesterday with Simi that if you can get up to those Amalgadons, Bran is still an absolute terror, particularly because of how rare Poison Divine Shield is in the game overall now.
Slightly concerning there for Dog. He just had his big dance turn and still lost to Sun on the Lich King. That's not where you want to be after your dance turn at all, with your 27-19 or whatever that minion was in the end.
Well, Bill, there's questions to be asked here about when this greed will end, because there are very greedy choices here as well with Nosy Looter, for example, if he wants to keep scaling. I think that smile that's starting to cross his face now, I think he wants to continue the greed. He does still have plenty of health to play with if he wants to go for this, but he is continually just missing on these win conditions.
Have noticed with Bill over the course of this tournament, that exact smile does mean that exact thing every single time. But he has got a lot of time to think about it. It is a very tough choice. Let's have a look at what's happening with Slisser's board over here. Bit of everything, but plenty of direction. Plenty of choices in direction, I mean.
Yeah, not really much has happened since the Cathy was discovered, right? Like, there's a 14 attack Jessie on the board, and there's a thing that allows her to scale that Jessie infinitely because of the immunity. Outside of that, everything is still a little bit much of a muchness, but as you say, the double parrot does at least create some interesting options later in the game if she wants to go big minions or poison scam, plus the golden parrot, golden selfless, that kind of thing. She can go for that. If she starts to pick up more high power beast pieces with Great Wolves or Pale Scales or whatever else that she can use with the parrots instead, then she can lean into that if she wants. But right now she is just living the luxury because she got that super powerful start with Golden Jessie early on, so that's really giving her the freedom to take the time to set up something else.
Over on the left-hand screen, Bill did bail. He picked up the Nadina and just decided to have the tempo for now, and it's turned out to be a decent decision, taking 7 instead of 7 million by the look of things. So
yeah, I mean, glass half full, glass half empty, right? I think you could equally argue, damn, I took something higher tempo and still lost the fight in that position. Like, you could phrase it like that and actually be kind of bummed out with your choice. But yes, obviously, in reality, if you've taken a higher tempo pick, you have almost certainly taken less damage than you would have done otherwise.
Right, Collins looking pretty strong on this Diablo. His early decision to not really care too much about the first fight. He picked up a couple of prizes. Starting to pay off. It's allowed him to get into the dragons on tier 3. He's hit the dragons he needed to, so now he's going to be in quite a strong fight, given that he gets a 10-10 to help out here as well. Just have a look what else he can add. He's got a bit more money if he wants to. He's also got the press door, which is actually huge. Obviously, we keep talking about that in these dragon picks. Remover of shields since 2021.
That long, huh? Incredible.
Yeah, that long ago. Very difficult last part of this turn for him here, though. He's got 2 gold just chilling, and he's got a triple locked up in the shop, and nothing he really wants to sell.
I agree, and no real incentive for a triple into a 5-drop. Like, if a triple into a 5-drop is a thing that Collins was particularly interested in here, I would advocate selling, for example, the Divine Shield Dragon, the Draconid, and picking up the triple right now to not float the gold. But I think Collins is probably more interested in digging for a 6-drop here instead, which means it's just one of those awkward turns where Bob's dealt you a weird interval and you just kind of have to set 2 gold on fire and just look yourself in the mirror and be okay with that.
Yeah, you just go, would I pay 5 gold for this minion? And it's Collins. Of course he's going to go for a 6. It goes without question. It's just how he's been all tournament. Look how these fights are
win coming into this one, but so far these attacks are not looking great from Collins' side. Of course, the scaling has gone now, but that is 17 health left remaining on the left-hand side, which means that gold grubber alone will take care of everything, and that's a big hit from RDU on the George. 12 damage going through to Collins. Very, very important, because now if Collins wants to continue to greed, he is in one-shot range. He is below that 15 health damage cap that gives you that protection that sometimes you can abuse to go for the greedy plays.
Yeah, and the hand wave here of, ugh, that was not pretty. You don't know how the other ones did, but you know you lost most of them because no prizes. He might be having to bail out here just to stay alive. If he stays alive, those Tarragozas will, of course, keep scaling. So, not the worst.
Look at who the next opponent is as well. It's the George again. The boss fight round actually ends up being entirely autonomous from the queue order sequencing in the normal round. So this is a thing that can happen. It's a little bit rare. You don't necessarily see it all the time. But Collins now has full information of what he's up against. Crucially, he was favored in the last fight, but he did also have a 10-10 on his side in the last fight that he doesn't have access to anymore.
Does have the 2 prizes though, so he just dumps those on the board, which will probably equate to about a 10-10 because I'm a lazy caster. I like to just level things up.
Yes and no, because he knows RDU has one as well, right? Because he just lost the fight to the George on the previous turn.
Oh, well, I'm going to go with, we've got the Tarragoza scaling, so it's about the same.
Yeah,
I'll just keep finding excuses to say it's about the same. RDU as well, unless times have changed very recently, is not a George enjoyer, so him doing well on that is a good sign for him for the day.
Right. Looked like RDU had the Reborn as his loot, so he's given Reborn to the Scaling Pirate Ripsnell captain here, just making sure that's protected for as long as possible, so he gets those nice juicy gold grubber attacks going through. RDU quite clearly did go for the triple into a 4 this game, looking for some of that avenge scaling, and he got what I like to call the consolation prize, which is gold grubbers. They're not necessarily what you are looking for in spots like this, but since he tripled off a token in particular as well, they are a very, very nice second prize in this position. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And the fact that you triple them into a really good unit later on as well just makes you board space and gives you a gigantic minion. Just to point out, by the way, as we're watching this fight mainly on the left-hand side, how Dog has not lost a fight since that one that he lost as a favourable after he had his scaling turn, his first scaling turn of the game.
Very
so
true.
Dog looking good here for second place at least.
And also we get the news that Dog is playing Tavern 1 Deryl as well, as we see just the 1 damage being thrown out to Aveline in that position. This is something that is very, very possible, particularly in the lobby that he is in, right? Mechs not being in is slightly annoying. You do generally want those putt bots to be down there as well to make this kind of thing happen. But Dog is juicing some pretty powerful stuff with those Chroma Wings and with the Demon as well that is distributing so much extra health around his board. So unconventional strategies for sure, but you can see just how big Dog is getting and how much of this scaling gets passed around his board when the death rattles start to go off as well.
But again, this is something you've highlighted a couple of times. This is the difference between the very high MMR players and the high MMR players. The ability to take something and make it work in a different way, or choose a strategy that fits the moment. You just know more about all of the heroes. You've got more options available to you. Like, even I can win a lobby by getting APM Pirates. They might not be as big as Island Cats Pirates, but they're still big. Slissa's luxury time ran out a turn or two ago by the look of things. She still has 1 giant minion, but who doesn't right now?
Yeah, she also is in a pretty weird situation right now because she's looking to play Ghoul against George potentially, but in the end having to bail, because if you look at her board state, for example, Parrot plus Ghoul is a bit weird. Spore plus Ghoul is a bit weird. Like, everything here doesn't quite work. Even after the Ghoul goes off, she's not going to have any death rattles left on her board because the Ghoul will kill the selfless hero. So she's in a bit of a weird spot with the way things are standing, but she does get one of the possible orders at the very least. But even then, you see that's a weird interaction as well. Like, I just don't necessarily think that was a ghoulable situation for Slissa in that spot, and because of it, she is going to take significant damage against RDU, but she is also crucially going to survive at 2 health.
Yeah, absolutely massive there for Europe if they could have knocked Slissa out in 8th place. But looking at the standings, it's slightly America's favour, but really, really close on that leaderboard. But Dog just looking immensely powerful. Wondering, he's going to cap out at a board full of 40-40s by the look of things. I don't think he can really change that pattern much, the way he's playing the lobby. So trying to keep an eye on who could outscale him in the next 2 or 3 turns. And at the moment, it doesn't look like anybody.
This is such a weird mishmash of stuff on Slisser's board right now. As I said, she did have options to lean in various directions. Now that she's not fighting against the George and you can just toss that ghoul into the sea, she is in a much better position with her board state overall. Like, essentially, quote, 2 poison minions on the board right now. Like, she will be trusting her giant Jessie to be poisonous at this stage of the game, and then she has the spore as well. And then alongside that, but yes, in this particular fight against what Dog has on the other side, that Jessie might just be a little bit smaller than she expects it to be.
And honestly, from memory, I think Dog's numbers were almost exactly the same size as this. It's going to be down to a break point that's really close on the Jessie.
Yeah, and the breakpoints are sketchy and a little bit rare and a little bit in Dog's favor, because once the death rattles start going off on his demons, obviously that pulls everything on his board out of range of those Jessie attacks being able to come through.
Never mind. Oh no, the Jessie's 38-40, so if they can snipe the 38-38 without it getting a health buff, that might actually be really, really huge here for Slisser.
Tavern 1 Daryl's so much fun. Look at it. It's beautiful. This is a board.
Alongside Sorreless Demons.
That right there is what peak performance looks like. That's huge. That first attack, pretty darn good for Dog, I would say. Very irrelevant first attack, and then a value trade into the Divine Shield, essentially. So now have to see where the rest of these attack go. But these are going very nicely now in the later stage of it for Slisser. Got some value trades through and then got to re-shield up at the end, which means Dog will finally start taking some damage, and Slisser dodging on 2 HP.
Wow. Collins has sort of got it all back together on the Diablo.
But greedy Bill is going to be the first player to bite the dust. That is America's player, WTY Bill, on the Maev that has gone down in 8th place, which is fantastic news for the Europe team, who really need to be putting up the big points throughout these lobbies. Again, to give you context of where we are in the series as a whole, Americas versus Europe, we've played out Constructed, we have played out Mercenaries. They are tied at 2 points to 2, so things will be decided by Battlegrounds, as has been true throughout the entire day, but I will reiterate the point anyway. So that means that this massive Mount Rushmore of a team that Americas has assembled does need to be vanquished straight up in 3 Battlegrounds lobbies by Team Europe.
And they are looking good for it at the moment, I think. Europe
pretty good
across the board. Not spectacular, but looking pretty tidy. But Collins is getting there. It looked for a while there that he might get punted out, and he still hasn't completely stabilized with a big board on 3 health, so at any moment he could either just become lobby leader or just come 7th. It's going to be very tight, I think.
Yeah, this is a big fight coming up right now, actually, that we're looking at in the head-to-head, because the actual direct challenge fight for the Diablo is Avalyn on the Panda, and they do have boards of, fairly similar power level here. Av, though, has the Nadina available. Even though Collins has much greater scaling, offer me one of these 2 boards for the long term, I will bite your hand off to get Collins' board over what Avalyn has going on. But the fact that Avalyn has those extra Divine Shields going on with the Nadina, and that this is the fight for all the marbles as to whether Collins is going to live here, I think is a really, really big deal.
I'm really excited by Simi's board here. She's got the 3 poisons and she's got the Reborn Maexna going on against all the stats that the Americas have put together. RDU's got George against all the stats the Americas are putting together. Europe might be in a really good spot here as the lobby progresses.
This fight, in the end, is very favoured for Collins. Looking at the way it pans out, it makes sense. That taunt that he has on the far right was actually very nice, because it meant that none of Avalyn's high attack dragons could that's pretty funny, the double Nadina drop off the Gas Coiler, but it meant that none of Avalyn's high attack dragons could actually attack relevant minions with their divine shields, and it gave more attackers initiative over to Collins. And Collins had the Pyro Drake coming through, right? So every time Collins got to attack, he was in fantastic shape because he got to cleave off one of those divine shields with every.
He's killed everybody, Solid. He killed Sun. Who else did he kill? He killed Slisser. And he killed... We watched it, and I'm blanking because I'm an idiot.
No, Avalyn survived on the Panda, which is the fight that we watched.
Killed Simi.
He killed Simi on the Hook Tusk, yeah.
So America's now in a great position suddenly.
Yep, 4 players remaining now are even split. Dog still looking great on that. Deryl, Collins looking pretty solid on that Diablo as well, with the dragon scaling going down. But RDU starting to look pretty fantastic himself with the way this is built up. But again, much more vulnerable to unstable Ghoul than he would be in a premium George lobby with Quillballs and mechs available.
Absolutely relevant, though, that the positions don't count as a tie. So Europe did get 5th and 6th, and Americas did get 7th and 8th. So that's a 3-point start for Europe. So they can afford to not win this lobby as long as one of these players can sort of get second, maybe a second, third versus first, fourth. They might be in an okay spot.
Yep, but again, this is where these Precious Pyro Drakes are going to come in real clutch for Collins, because behind those Divine Shields, RDU does not really have the stats because of that lack of scaling. So this could be a pretty solid interaction, especially with Collins having enough of these prizes banked. Boom, there goes 3 Divine Shields straight away. Now it's just going to be about where some of these attacks go, but you can see from the numbers at the top that Collins is a very big favorite, not only to win, but to lethal in this position. So it looks like America's might just be taking charge of another lobby here, because it's a very similar story on the other side as well.
Americas and Collins, I mean, we've talked about Americas as a team because they're all so strong, but Collins yesterday, 2 firsts and a 2nd place, has been their star performer in this tournament so far. And he wipes out RDU.
Yep, Collins gets the kill on RDU. Last few attacks going through on the other side. There is a lovely Divine Shield landing on one side, and actually out of nowhere, the tie gets scammed. That is a 0.7% tie, apparently, according to the numbers that we see at the top. So there is one more chance, and it has rolled nicely because actually... Avalyn on the Panda has found the Ghost here, which means as long as she does not die to Ghost, there is a good chance that Collins or Dog will eliminate the other in this spot. Good time once again to remind you all at home, if you haven't been following, identity is secret in these lobbies. Even though you have teammates, you are not allowed to know who they are. Streamer mode is active, so none of the names are displayed in the lobby. Skins are banned because you can use those as some kind of code to communicate who is who and set that up beforehand. So Dog and Collins will not be trying to engineer a tie here, as you might have seen in other team tournament formats. They will be fearing for their own lives that this is a European player that they are facing on the other side, and they will be going full murder board.
I'm going to do something in this fight, though, that I did yesterday by accident. Today I'm going to do it on purpose, because Avalyn is up against the George Ghost, and there's a very real chance she could lose that, although she has got a lot of Divine Shields of her own.
Ghoul versus Nadina interaction potentially coming out here.
She's got, according to the numbers at the top, very little chance. Radu's giant gold grubber is going to, as a ghost, Radu's still performing well for Europe by ruining them.
But in the meantime, while we weren't looking, there's a mage secret on the board for Avalyn. I believe she rolled Scamzarak hero power on that turn where we weren't looking and hit the ice block. So she does not have a care in the world right now, Lorinda. She can lose this fight by as much as RDU's Ghost pleases, because that ice block is going to protect her and potentially boost her up into that 2nd place.
And I have to confess, I didn't see what happened in the other fight. I was too excited by this particular one. But there weren't many minions on either side.
JK, ice block, not just for mercenaries.
No, they did. They either tied or came very close in the other one. I think Deryl lost it, but not by enough to knock him out.
So we are back to the well once again. Av trying to decide between Tess and Sneed in that spot. Just knowing what was on RDU's board, I can't really see any particular value to the Tess in that position. So getting another 6-drop on your board does make the most sense. But she just kind of has some fairly mediocre Kalagos scaling at this point. Even with 2 Kalagos on the board at this point in the game, the scaling just doesn't really get there, right? Like, what are you going to play? 3 or 4 battle cries over the course of a turn? So +6/6, +12/12 maybe, or +8/8 if you're particularly lucky with the way things roll down. In comparison to what Golden Kalagos and Promo Drake on the other side is doing for Collins, in comparison to what Dog can even dump on his board, right, in terms of Deryl scaling. Probably not going to be enough to get there for Avalon.
She's going to need almost exactly the Nadina to go first, and then Collins' big minion to crash into the Divine Shield of Chroma Wing, and then she might still not be in the lead, but she'll have a chance in that situation.
Yeah, Dog doing the smart thing here as well, I think, holding on to the Ghoul. He bought this on the previous turn, seeing that his opponent was Dragons, and expecting to have to deal with Nadina. That actually wasn't the case in the fight that he had against Collins, as it turns out, although, again, he wouldn't have known that. But he's now hanging on to it, because Ghoul is just good for the rest of this lobby now, right? He has Ghoul against this George for the Ghost fight. He then has Ghoul again for whichever one of the other players is remaining, and he knows again that both of those are Dragon players. So even if he didn't see Nadina previously, he knows that Nadina will be a thing that they are both looking for. So I would imagine Dog is looking to keep hold of this Ghoul for the long term.
It's the most RDU thing ever to get knocked out and still be the highlight of the next 2 fights. But Aveline does finally succumb to the Diablo, so it is going to be an America's 1-2, but it's also an America's 7-8, which means they'll have a very tiny lead going into the second lobby.
So a Europe 3, 4, 5, 6. It's just a Europe sandwich, the way this lobby is broken down. And so here we are again in this scenario where the 2 players will certainly be trying to big brain this last fight as much as they possibly can to try and bring it home. But in the end, it's not going to matter too much. They are just fighting for pride in this position. Shout out to the comp that Dog has ended up with here. This is very, very nice to see. A little break from the norm, at least in terms of what we've been seeing from comps so far throughout the tournament, staying on Tavern 1 for an extended number of turns, picking up this very, very silly board state, and then using that tempo to go up in levels to find birds, to find Baron, to find Divine Shields, to really pay that off and bring it home. I think he's put together a very nice comp and a deserved top 2 in this lobby.
It actually makes me happy to see when you get over 1,000 and the number just doesn't fit. I like that. It just shows I have got big numbers you can't even read anymore. It's just, don't fix that ever. Just leave it so it just looks like a 38 or 382,000 attack minion.
You didn't play Froggy's meta, right?
I didn't, no.
That one entirely? Yeah, okay. I think most of us who played that meta have had our fill of giant 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12-digit numbers, 23-digit numbers. Really depends how much patience you had for watching Frogger fights.
Yeah, I was doing the GM thing at the time, so I decided to just put the focus onto that. But I'm back now, I'm afraid, everybody, so unlucky. Let's see where this goes. 123. Well, that'll get 2 damage in.
Yep. Baron on the far right just tanking hits like it's merely a flesh wound.
This is so hard to call with numbers everywhere, but... And the deck track says it's a close fight anyway. I'm not just being completely ludicrous at this point.
Yeah, just eyeballing it from the start, I think how many of the birds got to go off on the initial attacks was one of the big deciding factors. But actually, things have changed significantly, and 1-672 does not beat a 40-40. I'm sorry, I can do this math.
I could hear Collins laughing through the silence. Is everything okay? Hello?
Oh. Hello? What are you worried about?
I just heard a massive sort of boom. I thought you'd fallen off your chair laughing or something, but we're good.
No, I don't think that was me. Was that me? I have no idea what's going on if that was me.
Okay, anyway, Collins takes down another lobby. That's 3 lobbies in a row that I believe he has won now over the course of the last 2 days. But they are going to get the news that I think it's a 1-point lead if Europe have all the middle numbers.